Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 26th of April 2022. These are the stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin with the latest update as far as the Ukrainian crisis is concerned. Russia has told the United States to stop sending more arms to Ukraine because, of course, there is $800 million worth of weaponry that US President Joe Biden has pledged as far as Ukraine is concerned. What kind of repercussions are these going to have? There are also going to be more meetings, more sanctions, and more bloodshed as a result of this crisis. Where is all of this heading? This is going to be the first segment today. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Elon Musk, who has, of course, bought Twitter for $44 billion US. What kind of impact is this going to have on the social media platform as well as on social media in general? Will it further curb freedom of rights, or will it further extend freedom of rights? Will there be a limit or a red line to cross or not to cross as far as freedom of expression is concerned? This is going to be our second story. Then we'll be talking about the Organization of Islamic Cooperation that has condemned the recent act of Holy Quran's desecration in rallies in Sweden and has called for global efforts to counter the alarming rise of Islamophobia. This is a joint statement that has come from the OIC. It says that Islamophobic behavior has sensitivities of over 1.5 billion Muslims. This is going to be our third story. Our last story concerns cooperation between Pakistan and China as far as a cauliflower hybrid is concerned, and its planting by carrying out experiments, demonstrations and promotions in multiple growing seasons since 2016. And apparently this is not just going to be relegated to cauliflower. Apparently there are many more projects in the pipeline as far as this cooperation between Pakistan and China is concerned to create hybrid forms of vegetables that are better for the season and better for the crop as well. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the updates as far as Ukraine is concerned. Whereas on the one end, Russia asks US to stop giving weaponry and pledging money as far as weaponry for Ukraine is concerned. There are other important issues at hand as well, including what is happening in Ukraine and the number of deaths as far as the casualties are concerned. 2,435 civilians killed, 2,946 injured in Ukraine as per United Nations estimates. More in the following report.
The diplomatic efforts are garnering momentum regarding Ukraine quagmire as UN Secretary General embarks a difficult three-day trip to Russia and Ukraine. 3 months into the Ukraine crisis, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is set to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Russian Foreign Minister warned that world should not underestimate the serious risk of a nuclear war over Ukraine. In a wide-ranging interview broadcast on state television, Sergei Lavrov cautioned that the conflict in Ukraine risks escalating into a third world war, and that NATO is, in a sense, engaged in a proxy war with Moscow by supplying Kyiv with weapons. Ironically, the White House revealed that the United States is considering imposing additional sanctions on Russia. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced that U.S. would allocate an extra $713 million of military aid to Ukraine and other European nations. Ukrainian President Zelensky appreciated the unprecedented assistance from Washington, whereby Russia's ambassador in Washington sent a diplomatic note demanding an end to the U.S. supply of weapons to Ukraine. European Commission President stated that Russia's aggression in Ukraine is a direct threat to Europe's security. Russia-Ukraine standoff, the biggest conflict in Europe since 1945, has left thousands dead or injured, reduced towns and cities to rubble, and forced over 5 million people to flee abroad.
Dr. Farah Nas, Foreign Affairs expert, joins us online. Dr. Farah Nas, thank you very much to have joined us. A lot of developments is happening almost every day as far as the Ukrainian crisis is concerned. But whereas the number of casualties are increasing by the day, on the other hand, we also see more sanctions and no end in sight as far as this crisis is concerned. Why is that? Is it from the Russian side? Is it from the Ukrainian side? Is it the US or the EU? Who wants not to end this crisis?
Thank you, Omar, for throwing this question on to me. It's a very important one, that who is the actual villain in this scenario or the story of war, where Ukrainians are paying the price by the loss of infrastructure that is happening to Ukraine, and the loss of human life, refugee crisis, food crisis, humanitarian crisis. So we can't say that Ukrainians are getting any benefit out of this war. Then, if we speak about Russia, how Russia can benefit out of it, yes, it could be their benefit in the form of that they will not accept NATO expansion to the eastern side. That was a decided thing between Russia and the West, that they will not expand. So, in terms of defeating Ukraine, I think Russia will benefit there. Now, speaking about America, are they really getting any benefit out of it? I think yes, because the war is not on their soil. The people who are dying are not the U.S. citizens or that belongs to the United States. And end of the day, they are pouring money and resources to Ukraine, and then they are getting involved into this conflict. Recently, they have come up with the strategy of bleed Russia, which is like a vicious cycle of bleeding one another. So it happened back in time during the Soviet Union period when America bleed Russia and they were defeated in Afghanistan. And then when America got in power in Afghanistan, Russia was bleeding them, and this is how their withdrawal happened. And now this is the time for Russia to bleed one more time. In this entire bleeding phases, different phases that we have seen in the history of war in the world, human beings have suffered a lot, and all the atrocities and the cost has been paid by the poor civilians who are never ever party to this conflict. So Europe, I would say nobody even brings it up, but Europe is at the cost of all this war because they are highly dependent on Russian energy resources. And I think peace and stability has direct impact on the sovereignty, the independence, and the stability of any state. So today we can see that Sweden and Finland have shown interest in joining the NATO troops because they are feeling threatened that what will be happening to us. So everybody is trying to find some sort of camouflage under the NATO umbrella, that they think that probably if once they are part of the NATO, they can be securitized.
But
But I
Dr.
think there's
Farahnas,
no
let's talk
security at
about
all.
NATO. Dr. Farahnas, let's talk about NATO. You said that there are certain European nations that want to enter into the NATO alliance as far as this crisis is concerned. NATO, isn't this the first reason why Russia said that it does not want NATO or Ukraine to be part of NATO, and that is why this whole issue kind of elevated to the degree that we are seeing right now. Now that NATO continues its, let's put it this way, endeavors as far as Ukraine is concerned and going east, this is what Russia has had as apprehension. What do you foresee? More deaths, more casualties, more destruction? Where does it end?
The game, it began, I think, in the late 1989 and early 90s when it was decided at the time of the Berlin Wall and all that, the NATO will not expand its troops to the eastern side. And that was declared as a red zone and a red line by Russian forces. So I think it's not Russia who is in violation of it. It is, I think, the NATO who is in violation of the agreement that happened between the two of them. And the expansion of NATO troops means that all those fears that Russia had in terms of its expansion towards the eastern side are becoming true. So can we call NATO the alien here? I think there is more a superpower behind who is, holding the strings of the NATO and molding and changing it and shifting it towards the direction the United States want them to play that way. So I was astonished by one of the findings that I found for some of my research, that why this Russia is becoming a threat here, why they cannot, be at peace with one another. From they, I mean United States and Russia. So I found that by closely analyzing the 15 world top economies of the world, after like America being at the top and then followed by China, Russia is at number 11. In all those 15 top economies, I found that all other countries are at the right side of the United States. So it is only Russia who is, on the other side of the superpower. So I think at this stage, China cannot be directly targeted. So let America bleed Russia policy. They came up with this policy that let's go and target the less, powerful economy, and then we have to go after the more powerful economy that it happens to be China. So it is more the game of sustainability of the superpower in the global politics, and America can go to any extent uh, to keep its superpower position in the world, and it is in the best interest of America to follow whatever paths is suitable to them. Whether it's
Dr. Farah, this said, you cannot deny the number of casualties, whether it be the number of deaths or the injured, as per the United Nations estimates. This is something that is going to increase. So the ultimate loss is that of the civilians that are present in Ukraine, a majority of whom have also fled. Around more than 5.2 million Ukrainians who have fled to other countries. 7.7 million are internally displaced. This is what has been said by the United Nations Refugee Agency. Talking of the United Nations, Dr. Farah, I'd like your point of view about two important things. The first, the visit of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to the region, in which he is going to have talks with both the parties, that is Ukraine and Russia. And second, a very important vote of the 193 members of the United Nations General Assembly on a resolution that will require the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council to justify their use of veto in the future.
Yes, this visit of the General Secretary is, I think, very important because he's going to bring, this diplomatic solution to the problem. But Omar, I completely disagree with all these moves. Like United Nations, it keeps on ringing the bells, but America ever listened to the bells? I think no. When it comes to the numbers of casualty, deaths across the world, we have seen what happened in the Middle East, what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Ukraine for now.
In Iraq.
In
How can we
Iraq,
forget?
yes, we cannot deny any of those countries where the number of deaths, casualties, bloodshed was too big. And I won't be saying that United Nations being, a neutral organization did not ring the bell at that time. It kept on ringing the bells. The number of refugees were quite high even at that time. And we could see nobody is coming up to help support, the people who have been displaced due to all those conflicts where there is only one country involved, and that is unfortunately the United States. So I think the lesson need to be learned if whether there is any possibility of coming to diplomatic terms after the United Nations General Secretary visit to Moscow. I think right in the beginning, it was Russia who was always says, give me on a piece of paper that you will not expand to the eastern side, and I don't want to get involved in any sort of hot conflict. They were not ready to provide that kind of assurances, which was not something that Russia was demanding at first place. I think that was a preconceived assurance that happened between the Western forces and Russia back in late in 1989 and 90s. So I don't see any diplomatic solution here because I know war is a very costly business, and according to Sun Tzu, an evil enemy will bring his own nation to the ground to rule over the world. So at the cost of all these people, I don't think so. The Western forces, NATO, and its 40 member states and its allies, they are ready to have a diplomatic solution for a number of factors. One, that do they really want to end this conflict? I think no. With the recent Boris Johnson's visit to India, he simply highlighted that the war has to drag on to 2023. This means this is on their agenda, that they don't want to end the conflict as soon. Secondly, that if they go into a diplomatic solution, then they have to listen to Russia. Are they ready to listen to Russia to not expand its forces to the eastern side, which is a pre-decided thing between them? I think no. So and thirdly, if they end the conflict, what will happen? Russia will be able to work again on building up its economy and constructing its economy. I think that's not in the best interest of the world superpower of today, because it wants to sustain and maintain its unipolarity in the world. And as I mentioned earlier, that at the moment there were like 3 states, economically powerful states, who can stand against the American
All right, Dr. Farah, what
unipolar
about
world.
the use of veto and the justification whenever the veto is used in the future as per the vote that is being held in the United Nations General Assembly as we speak?
Yes, so the veto, they will try their level best. As we know, Russia is all alone there, and China being on the side of it, probably something better can come out of it. But whether they will be able to veto it altogether, I think it's a bit trickier. It's not something that we can simply, predict at this stage, because there are so many stakes involved in. And as we could see that Europe is completely dependent on the Russian energy market. And if there is a shift there, then of course Russia is also planning to move its market to the Asian side. So Asian side means it's China. So China will try its level best, to securitize its future. It's a game of who is going to have a better future. So for a better
All
future,
right.
they can go into any extreme to securitize themselves.
All right, Dr. Farah, let's also talk negotiations. There have been 2 rounds of negotiations. There was a lot of optimism after the second round of negotiations. But now Sergei Lavrov, who's from the Russian side, says that goodwill has its limits, but if it isn't reciprocal, that doesn't help the negotiation process. Is Ukraine hindering the negotiation process as per Russian claims?
I think Ukraine is hindering the negotiations. As I said, that it is not in the best interest of all these states who really don't want to bring peace in the region. They don't care about the Europeans. They don't care about the Ukrainians. All they care about is to isolate Russia and bleed them. So when they are very clear on their foreign policy and what to do and what not to do, when they're very clear on their national interest and all, I think they are not ready to do anything. And what we can talk about negotiations where America is pouring more and more money into the Ukraine, where bulk of its infrastructure has been damaged, and it has recently came into the news that $332 million have been more poured into Ukraine to buy more weapons. So with weapons, with resources, with money, I think they are, increasing the number of deaths in Ukraine, and they are not thinking about that what will happen to Europe altogether and its security. It's about, all the people who are living there, their peace, security, stability, and everything, which is really, really in danger due to all these criminal policies.
All right, Dr. Farah, let's also talk about the different apprehensions that the Russian side has, as enunciated by Sergei Lavrov. Whether on the one hand, he says there's a real risk of a third world war, and that is also something that has been reiterated by the Russian space chief, that says that any destruction of a spacecraft, any attack against a spacecraft could potentially trigger a third world war. Why is there a talk of a third world war? Is there a danger present for this incursion, for this current crisis to exaggerate, to aggravate itself into a world war?
Well, Omar, I think it's not only like about the third world war discussion. It's about the nuclear war discussion as well, where Russia keeps on warning them that nuclear war is a real serious threat to all of you. But who can wage war within this situation where Russia is all alone, and then all other parties have grouped together. Now it's a question of how strongly China can take a position here. We have seen in case of Sri Lanka, China never came out to bail them. In case of Pakistan, it never came up to the front to help support the Pakistani government to come out of the IMF program. So in case of Russia, what Russia can expect of them, if there is not, like if all these powerful states are not coming up to a consensus that whether they want to sustain in the unipolar world, so I think then the environment suits them and they should not get into any sort of conflicts with one another. And I think
Dr.
that's...
Dr. Farah, I have a last question for you. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen describes Russia's aggression in Ukraine as a direct threat to Europe's security. This has been quoted through the Associated Press news agency. Is really this a threat, a direct threat for Europe?
Yes, it is. It is a direct threat for Europe because, as I said, Europe energy security is linked to the Russian and Ukrainian crisis. And if this war is not getting stopped here, as we can see that Russia has captured a chunk of the Ukrainian territory. So this means that they can, and even the seaports and all of that, the Mariupol. So with that, what will happen? The access to waters is going to be limited, and overall, with the influx of all these refugees and this entire expansionism policy is not going to stop here at Ukraine. It will be going to exceed even in the future. So the security of Europe is completely dependent on ending this conflict. But whether this conflict ends, I don't see it's happening because unless and until they leave Russia at such a position that Russia is not able to stand again, I think till that time they will continue it and the weapons will keep coming to Ukraine to fight back.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farah, Foreign Affairs expert, joining us and talking to us about the latest updates as far as the crisis that has engulfed Ukraine is concerned. A lot of other developments have also occurred. The United States is considering imposing additional sanctions. United Nations Secretary General, as I've said, is visiting on a 3-day visit to both the countries to try to find a solution to all of this. And of course, we've talked about the European Commission. 3 NATO warships have arrived in the Finnish port of Turku to train with Finland's navy as Helsinki considers the possibility of joining the US-led alliance. Also, Russian Foreign Minister says that the danger is serious, it is real, you can't underestimate it. He's told the Interfax news agency when talking about a possibility of a third world war. This and so much more is happening as we speak. Let's hope for these talks to kind of come to some kind of tangible solution between Russia and Ukraine, because otherwise the results could be extremely disastrous. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns social media, Twitter, and Elon Musk, who has acquired this social media platform for $44 billion US. What kind of impact is this going to have on Twitter, on social media in general, and on the freedom of expression that we have been seeing on Twitter of late? More in the following report.
Twitter stated that it has agreed to sell itself to Elon Musk in roughly $44 billion deal that has the potential to expand the billionaire's business empire and put the world's richest man in charge of one of the world's most influential social networks. Twitter is a social media platform populated by millions of users, and this is a seminal moment for the 16-year-old company, which emerged as one of the world's most influential public squares. Elon Musk wants to enhance potential of Twitter with new features, making the algorithms open source to increase trust, defeating the spam bots, and authenticating all humans. According to a statement issued by Musk, free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is a digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. Political activists expect that Musk regime will mean less moderation and reinstatement of banned individuals. Twitter shares rose 5.7%, and the deal represents a near 40% premium to the closing price the day before Musk disclosed he had bought in more than 9% stake. The high-profile purchase continues a tradition of billionaires buying control of influential media platforms, including Jeff Bezos' 2013 acquisition of The Washington Post.
Now, Ariba Shahid, business journalist, has joined us online. Ariba, thank you very much to have joined us. Ariba, when we look at the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk, and of course the board has approved it, but the shareholders have yet to approve it, but of course it seems as if it is going to be ultimately approved. What kind of changes do you foresee as far as this social media platform is concerned? Because as per Elon Musk, he describes himself as a free speech absolutist. So is there going to be an absolute free speech on Twitter?
So there's one of the platforms that enjoys more free speech than we see on other platforms. The rules regarding content are a little more relaxed. However, there is some sort of censorship when it comes to some certain countries. Like, for instance, people from countries like Iran or China, people from their media have China-associated media or government-associated underneath their name written on it. So these are some forms of censorship or some forms of, control that Twitter does exercise at this point in time. However, moving forward, with Elon Musk there, we might see that there's more freedom towards it. Like, for instance, Trump's account that was indefinitely suspended because of false information and whatever, those things, they might be reversed. So Twitter will now, although Twitter is already seen as a place where people are very vocal about their opinion, anonymous accounts can exist, people can say things behind a mask with no fear. I feel that is something that will only grow with time. The freedom of speech that is experienced there will only grow with time.
Or Ariba, I'd like your point of view on 2 quotes that he said while during a TED interview. And he said that he'll be very reluctant to delete tweets and will be very cautious about permanent bans. Of course, this is in relation with Donald Trump and any other future or past bans that have been put forward by the previous management of Twitter or the previously by Twitter before being acquired by Elon Musk. Also, he acknowledges that Twitter would have to abide by national laws governing speech in markets around the world. Therein lies the dichotomy. On the one hand, you guarantee free speech. On the other hand, you say that you have to abide by national laws. Can you balance that out?
So Musk, at the end of the day, is a businessman. So even though this may seem like a frivolous purchase on his part, he is a businessman. And in order for Twitter to be a operating company and to continue operating around the world, it will have to continue collaborating and working with governments. For instance, Pakistan in the past has banned platforms like YouTube and Facebook as well, and TikTok as well. So once they've done things like that, the only way for these platforms to actually flourish in the country, and a country of 20 million people, right, is to actually engage and make sure that they comply with the laws from country to country. So while Musk says that, as a businessman, he will continue to look at what's best for Twitter's financial interests as well.
Ariba, also let's talk about the poison pill that was initiated by Twitter's board in the beginning, but then of course they initiated talks. What exactly is a poison pill?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
All right, I said Twitter's board in the beginning had enacted what we call a poison bill, so that any such acquisition cannot go through. But of course, once Elon Musk went on board and explained his point of view, they agreed to start negotiations with him. What exactly is a poison pill in business terms?
I'm very sorry, I really can't hear you.
Okay, there seems to be some kind of an audio issue due to which Ariba can't hear us. Nevertheless, I'll explain what a poison pill is. A poison pill can make a takeover attempt prohibitively expensive. Now, Musk outlined the financial commitments that he lined up to back his offer of $48.5 billion US, and as no other bidders emerged, the board opened negotiations with him. He has also voiced a number of proposed changes for the company, from relaxing its content restrictions, such as the rules that suspended former President Donald Trump, and ridding the platform of its problems with fake and automated accounts. Can you hear us now, Ariba?
Yeah, somewhat better.
All right. Now, Elon Musk, as we all know, is the world's wealthiest person, according to Forbes magazine, with a fortune of $279 billion US. Most of it is tied up in Tesla stock. He owns 17% of the company, and of course, SpaceX, which is his privately held space company. We are unclear about how much Musk has. Do you feel he can actually pay the $44 billion with, of course, the help of banks such as those that he has talked about, Stanley Morgan and others?
So essentially, when we hear about the world's richest people, and when we hear about their assets or their net worth, we need to realize that all of it's not in the form of cash, or all of it's not liquid, or it's not like they can actually take this money and use it. So in terms of Musk, what is likely is that there is a chance that, of course, he can pay this, but obviously not all through his own funds. Consortiums of the sort exist, things of the sort exist as well. But for him, especially with a lot of his money tied up in stocks, but the very fact that he was able to increase his shareholding to like 9% gradually over the span of a few months is actually pretty interesting. But yeah, it's like even locally as well, when we see companies taking over another company, or an individual trying to come up and own up a significant share, even in the local market, the money that we see being pushed into a stock is not entirely the person's own money. And of course, they're backed by banks, they're backed by other high net worth individuals, they're backed by consortiums of the sort. So Musk claiming to put in all the money himself, not 100% sure that is possible at this point.
All right. Ariba, also let's talk about Elon Musk saying that he's going to make the algorithms open source. And do you feel this is going to have a positive or a negative implication as far as Twitter is concerned?
So democratizing of the internet in any form is something that has been up for debate for a while. Open source is seen as a way of growth. Twitter open sourcing is a little confusing in the sense that how does this translate as a business decision for Twitter itself? Um, but I see that the future is more open source, yes.
All right. So this is you feel is going to happen to Twitter as well in the future, and of course, it's
Not,
going to
not,
have positive
not the
repercussions
way,
because open source means a lot of people can get access and
not
make
exactly the
programming for
way
Twitter.
Musk is saying though, like not exactly the way Musk is claiming it to happen.
All right. All right. Well, let's see how, as per what Musk claims, really will happen. What will happen to the organizational hierarchy of Twitter following Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter? Will that change? Will Mr. Agarwal stay as a CEO, or will there be a change as far as that is concerned?
It's too soon to say with definitely right now, but like the very fact that Jack is off, Jack is not there as the leader anymore, and Agarwal is there, and the very fact that there have been so many changes happening at Twitter itself over the past few months, and now this. Um, but the board, it's a decision of the board, it's a decision of the shareholders at the end of the day. Um, so I think for the time being, there will be some continuity in Twitter's leadership, but we can expect things to go up and down, considering the personality and the volatility that Musk has.
All right, because since Mr. Agarwal took hold as CEO, the company shares have fallen down more or less around 10%. Nevertheless, let's also talk cryptocurrencies. Now, Elon Musk is a huge fan of cryptocurrencies. He has also suggested that Dogecoin is going to be added as a payment option on Twitter for its premium subscription service. Do you feel that is something that could happen in the near future, or do you feel this will take time?
So already Twitter has a monetization feature, and it has been rolled out. In fact, Pakistanis can also participate in it, but the very fact is that we do not have the accounts in Pakistan that can enable you to monetize your account. But keeping that in mind, crypto is something that is being explored extensively, and considering Musk's bullish nature towards crypto, I see that this happening very soon, and I see that this could happen very soon. However, one challenge that they will face is crypto isn't regulated in all countries around the world, and in some countries it is not deemed illegal enough to use as tender. So that will be an issue they have. But like we said, he will take it on a country to country basis. So probably, we will see crypto coming in as a major form of because if you
Payment
look at
option
Twitter over the past
for social media platforms such as Twitter. Thank you very much, Ariba. Shahid, business journalist, talking to us about the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk. We've now been joined by, of course, our second guest, Asad Baig. He's the executive director of Media Matters for Democracy. Asad, thank you very much to have joined us. Asad, the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk, what does that mean for Twitter?
Look, I think we have two major points to ponder at this point. One, the Twitter as a company is transitioning from a public company to a private company, which means that the external regulations, which could affect the functioning of Twitter, for instance, the safeguarding of the interest of the other stakeholders and whatnot, as we've seen in the past with Tesla, for instance, right? They are not going to work. And in a shape of a private company, it will essentially be Musk himself who will be in full control of Twitter. And a big question mark, I think, for us is that do we want a person like Musk, a billionaire, and corporations who are that I'll talk about in a bit, but do we want one person in control of an organization and a company and a platform like Twitter, which is essentially used as a free expression tool and a platform for everyone in the world? I think the second big point that we need to ponder is that Musk is only paying about $21 billion of the $44 billion deal. More than half is coming from banks and various banks. And the problem with banks when they loan you money is that they want revenue, right? They want improved revenue generation.
Of course.
So my question is that what are those things that Twitter is going to do for an increased revenue generation? In my experience,
what about the premium service that Twitter
yes.
offers? Asad, what about the premium service? Will the rates go high? Will Twitter in the longer run become a paid service? Is that a possibility as well?
That's what I'm saying. That's my question. I have no idea how they're going to make sure that they double or even triple the revenue for Twitter, because if they've taken 21 or 22 or 20, I don't know how many billion, I think to about $23 billion dollars loan from various banks, then they clearly need to come up with a revenue structure. Now, my point is, how are they going to do that? And whenever companies want to create, companies like Twitter, for instance, whenever they want to make revenue from the data, from user data, from other means, it generally doesn't end really well for the end users. So that's a big question. And then there are things like, either we'll defeat the bots or die trying, and things like that. And it kind of gives you an idea that perhaps this whole thing is not going to end very well for the end users.
All right, Asad, let's also talk about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. We've seen the banning of Donald Trump's Twitter handle by Twitter in the past, and now Elon Musk says that he's going to let all tides come in as far as freedom of expression is concerned. At the same time, he also says that he will have to take into account the national laws governing speech in markets across the world. What is he actually intending to do? Free speech or no free speech? I mean, what does he want?
Look, that's very interesting, and that's exactly what confuses us as digital rights activists, right? Because we don't see any clear sort of strategy or direction where we think that Twitter will head in the future, right? So one thing we need to make sure that that free speech obviously is not absolute, right? So for instance, if you do dangerous speech, if you do defamation for another person, if you incite violence on Twitter, and so on, it doesn't really fall under free speech. So what exactly are the parameters of free speech here? And
exactly.
Then again, following the local laws, that's very interesting, because we see that Twitter getting in rough with the Indian authorities, and there was even an FIR, against Twitter officials. So how are they going to deal with these issues when they talk about,
Because Asad, here I'd like to cite two examples. Twitter has been said to be instrumental behind spawning of the Arab Spring uprising, and also of playing a role in the January 6, 2021 storming of the US Capitol. Now, can Twitter be allowed to do or to fan such extremism or such hatred in the future as well? And if not, then where does that leave the business acumen of Elon Musk and his strategy? Because nothing is really clear as far as what he wants.
That's exactly what my point is, that nothing is clear. And just to counter what you said, free speech is very subjective, right? So, for instance, Twitter is used as a platform by people in Kashmir and others also to talk about free speech and freedom issues and whatnot, right? So while we don't want them to obviously not have a platform like Twitter, we also want things like Capitol Hill to not happen again. So that's exactly why I'm saying that it's too much of a responsibility for an individual to cater to. It needs to be multi-stakeholder. So we have yet to see what will happen with Twitter. But I think from what we know about Musk, things are not looking very bright. That's what my fear is.
All right, but once he acquires it, how long will it take for us to really see the changes or the modifications that will be brought about as far as Twitter is concerned?
I really have a good plan, because from the looks of it, I think it's going to take a little while, and I think the deal will go. It'll be fully finished in about 6 months' time. But like I said, we have no idea about what the plan is. I think first thing they probably need to do is to talk about this plan for Twitter, and just more than just one line about he's going to defeat the bots, for instance, or other things that he said on Twitter.
All right. Well, you as the executive director of Media Matters for Democracy have been championing the rights of social media and its usage as far as highlighting democratic values are concerned. Do you feel also that when it comes to these values, there's always a red line between what are the actual values and how you can contort them to use it to your own advantage? Should that also be regulated on social media platforms such as Twitter?
Listen, like I said, free speech is not absolute, right? And we've seen Twitter not playing a role in defending women, in defending other religious minorities that across the world, and not just in Pakistan, across the world, when there is hate speech, organized misinformation against them, and so on. So I think things like these, Twitter needs to sort of prop up its role in kind of, I wouldn't say regulating them, but defending the people from the harm that comes through platforms like Twitter and whatnot. But that's exactly my problem, right? Musk himself has been involved in quote unquote trolling some of the individuals that we've seen. I mean, the infamous tweet that he did, against Bill Gates, for instance, is one of the examples. I just tweeted this morning. So that's exactly what my problem is. I mean, do we really think that the person like Musk would have a plan for Twitter? I really hope he does. I really hope he has a plan to sort of really improve the values of Twitter and do like some sort of multi-stakeholder engagement in content regulation and protection from harm. But this is yet to be seen, I would say.
All right, only time will tell, but all we can hope is that things don't go haywire from now onwards. Thank you very much, Asad Baig, Executive Director of Media Matters for Democracy, talking to us about the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk, who's a billionaire and the richest man, apparently, as per the Forbes magazine, in the world. Let's go to our last two topics very quickly. The first is the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, that has condemned the recent act of Holy Quran's desecration during rallies in Sweden and has called for global efforts to counter the alarming rise of Islamophobia. There is a joint statement that has come out from the OIC. It says that such behavior, such Islamophobic behavior, hurts the sensitivities of over 1.5 billion Muslims across the world, and it is a gross abuse of the right of freedom of expression. It has also condemned the practice of insulting Islam, Christianity and Judaism alike, and it says it stands against all acts of hate and violence on the basis of religion or belief. Is the world listening? That is my question. Lastly, let's come to China and Pakistan that are cooperating on cauliflower hybrid planting. Now, of course, we all know that a lot of genetic modulation has happened in the West as well, as far as vegetables is concerned, as far as fruits are concerned, so that it is beneficial for humankind. Whether it is or not is a huge discussion that we'll have, inshallah, another day. Nevertheless, a Chinese company has cooperated with Pakistan on cauliflower hybrid planting by carrying out experiments, demonstrations and promotions in multiple growing seasons since the year 2016. Now, Sui Li Yang, who is the Executive Deputy General Manager of Tianjin Tianlong Zaitian Agricultural Science and Technology Company Limited, has said that she is very optimistic as far as the future of this cooperation is concerned, and also her company's cooperation with Pakistan is concerned, because in the past Pakistan used to think that the quality of Chinese seeds were not as good as that of the Western seeds, but now of course things have changed. Pakistani farmers, as she says, also choose Chinese seeds not because of low prices, but also that the quality is pretty good. And apparently this is not just going to relegate itself to cauliflower, but they are also going to be an exports of Chinese cabbage, cucumber, peppers, melons and other high quality seed resources to Pakistan in the future. So here's looking forward to more cooperation between China and Pakistan in this field as well. With that, we come to an end of today's Newsroom. See you inshallah tomorrow. News story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Have a blessed fast. Allah Hafiz.